Hello and welcome to Radio Waves. I'm your host, Kris Poliquin, and this is a production of Red Apples Media. We're broadcasting out of WLBE-790 out of Leesburg, Florida. And if you're watching us on television, you're doing so on Lake Sumter TV, Comcast Channel 13, Bright House Spectrum 498, and CenturyLink Prism Channel 83. So today, I've invited Leesburg's very own Chief of Police, Rob Hicks, and Sgt Kim Stewart, who's the Crime Prevention Sergeant for Leesburg. Chief, Sergeant, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thanks, Kris. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It really is an honor. It really is. I know what you guys do for your local community. I say yours. I work in Leesburg, but don't live there. And I understand the importance that your role actually has. But let's start the conversation with a little bit about Irma. Throughout the show, we're going to talk about crime prevention, some preventive tips, and some of the events you have coming up. But I'm curious to see how did Leesburg fare during and after the storm?
Well, I can tell you, and I brought some statistics and looked up a few things, some comparisons from, say, the 5 days of this event that Irma was prior to, during. Irma was an extremely slow storm. Seemed like it took forever to get here and then forever to pass, compared to last year, same time with no storm occurring. And I can tell you, before I get into that specifically, when Matthew came, the following year, we had ramped up the EOC. It was a huge storm that was coming, and we were prepared for it. And luckily, we didn't get any effects. But I can tell you, it was evident between then and the after actions reviews that we did into implementing what we did this year. The recovery, the process throughout, before, during, and after, went like clockwork. All the department heads, all of the staffers, everybody worked together, and it was an extremely successful recovery event for us. And the city of Leesburg recovered much faster, I believe, because of the preparations that were put into place. So I think the city did a great job at that particular aspect. I can tell you that some of the things that we looked at and people were noting was the traffic. Probably starting on Wednesday, 27 was locked down, basically northbound. There's a small part of the turnpike that runs through the city limits of Leesburg, and that was out on 470. That was bumper to bumper, as far as you could see. So our traffic complaints went up 900%. During that time frame, correct, during that 5 day span. Well, before and a couple days after.
Sure.
So even with that, the red lights out and everything like that, so it was up 900%. The unique thing was that our traffic crashes were only up 75%. Now that number seems high, but it was a matter of 20 traffic crashes the year before to 35 this year. Now with every intersection being out of power, with all of the people not from this area, I think that was a significant success that people were actually, we had tons of complaints of people running through the non-working sites, and I got on my social media and posted, make sure you treat it like a four-way stop and those kind of things. But for the most part, people were aware and observant, and I think it was because of the environment. They were a little more concerned, so they were looking out. So that was a success. Unfortunately, on the bad side of things, are burglaries, both commercial, residential, and autos. Those all went up between 200% and 500% because people taking advantage when other people are either leaving their home or boarded up or whatever the case may be. Our citizens assists were obviously up. They were up by about 400%. And we were dealing with some mental health crisis, some mental health issues. Those went up about 600%, as well as we were helping people get the assistance before, during, and after the storm. And the one thing that was notable this year in the Emergency Operations Center, we were listening to the radio while it was going on, up until the point the winds were starting to get impassable, which is around 45 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour. Our officers were going from call to call to call. I mean, our radio was just dispatching. Whereas during Matthew, I think people hunkered down, and maybe they didn't have as much concern for Matthew as they did for Irma. But the road was a lot more, it was quiet. The officers weren't responding to calls. But we had to actually, at one point, we had to evaluate what was a call for service. Is it safe to send an officer there? And if it's not, we're going to have to delay a little bit. what we were able to do is we have a rescue vehicle, which is a large armored vehicle, and it is used for rescue purposes. So we staffed it with some police officers, and they were able to go drive out in the high winds to do damage assessment and to go to calls for service that ordinarily we wouldn't have been able to go to.
Is that right? Wow. Because we heard a lot of that on the news as well, national news, local news, that once the winds get to a certain point, you're on your own. And there were some counties, like in Tampa, I heard one say just that. You're on your own. We will not come. And a lot of people got, I don't know, maybe frightened, but almost upset at that and didn't understand why.
Well, and I absolutely agree with that. And I think that I would probably attribute part of those calls for service as the storm was coming down on us quicker, because I think people wanted to get there, whatever help they needed, they wanted to get that call in before they felt that nobody was going to respond to it. And, we have contingency things in place, and there's a difference between some of the rescue vehicles and some of the, whether ambulance, because of the shapes of their trucks. I mean, you see what an ambulance looks like. Wind's going to blow it over, and they're not going to be able to get assistance there. But we all have contingency. We work together, not only with fire EMS, but with the sheriff's office and with surrounding cities, that if we do have the vehicles like we are lucky enough to have, the sheriff's office has, we can, in extreme situations, still get to help people. Now, not on a mass quantity situation, but we still want to have things in place that we're going to be able to respond to our citizens in need, in their times of need.
Okay. Now, you spoke a little bit about opportunists, basically. And I'll use the word because looters, just opportunists. Is that still an issue as we sit here now, or are we pretty much back to normal? Because it seems like our surrounding area is doing well. Power's on, more people are home, things of that nature.
No, I think we're back to normal. And, part of the process, too, of when you talk about opportunists, there are people that driving through this community that may get to this point from wherever they're traveling and say, okay, this is the place that I'm going to stop, and they're going to be able to take advantage of some of the things, or they may have, a lot of the crime trends that go around the state of Florida there are criminal groups that come from one jurisdiction, they'll travel into another, commit their crimes, and then go back to that jurisdiction. So, you have to attribute some of those things to that at that particular point.
Okay. We were talking about crime prevention tips. So what can people do, or what should people look out for normally to kind of help secure themselves and their belongings, possessions, or keep themselves safe from bodily injury?
Well, one of the things and we break down, and Sgt Stewart does several seminars on crime prevention. She's our crime prevention specialist and has gone to several schools to receive special training on top of her 25 years of service here at the Leesburg Police Department. And so she goes and speaks to community groups. We'll host our own. We partnered with the Chamber of Commerce to host a kind of a robbery prevention for commercial businesses. And so we kind of break it down into being at home, being in your car, or either being out or at work. So in the commercial setting, whether you're shopping or whether you're a store owner. But, one of the unique things was, and we were talking about Irma, and I was talking about this with one of my lieutenants who came in, and I don't know which church has it up on their billboard, but they have a message that says, now that Irma's gone, it's still okay to talk to your neighbors. And I thought that was a wonderful message for them to send. Yeah. And that fits hand in hand with crime prevention. And we had talked about it, and Sgt Stewart and I had talked about, what that means. And we have a lot of neighborhoods where we get calls for service, and the people don't know their neighbors. They don't get out anymore. They don't go next door, knock, and bring people a cake or sit down and have coffee. And that's not unique to Leesburg for sure. That is a nationwide situation where we're more in tune with our social media, and we sit at home on our computers, and we just don't talk to our neighbors. And sometimes you don't have things in common with your neighbor. Right. And you're just, maybe a young family and then a retiree or whatever. But from my point of view, you have a vested interest in getting to know your neighbors. even if you don't necessarily like each other or have things in common, the commonality that you do have is your residence, is your neighborhood and your community. So when you're gone, they can watch your property, and when they're gone, vice versa. So that we found that to be helpful.
All right, well, thanks, Chief. We need to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll continue our conversation with the Chief of Police and Sgt Kim Stewart. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to Radio Waves. Again, I'm your host, Kris Poliquin, and this is a production of Red Apples Media. In our first segment of the show, we spoke with Chief of Police for Leesburg, Rob Hicks, about some of the crime that we experienced in Irma compared to last year. For Matthew, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, and it was actually, what we did was we didn't pick it during the actual Storm Matthew, but just during the same weekend or that same 5-day period of last year when there was not an event going on, just to show kind of the increase of and decrease in some areas of calls for service.
Okay. Now I'd like to move on to some of the events and some of the things that you and your department have going on in the future.
We've got one that I'm putting together and working on right now, which is probably our largest event, and that is our National Night Out. It was scheduled for October 3rd, but because of Hurricane Irma, we did change it. We pushed the date back to November 7th to give people a little bit more time to recover from the hurricane.
Sure.
But I'm still in the fundraising part of that. This will be our third year. Last year, they estimated several thousand people attended.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty big. We had over 87 vendors that were set up there. We do entertainment, but it's basically a big festival, and it takes me months to put it together, trying to pull it all together. But we will have free food. Everything is free, and the people that are there are either sponsors. The vendors are either sponsors or they have something to offer the community in one way or another. But we will have free food. We'll have entertainment, we'll have giveaways, we've got carnival games. This year I've got pony rides, which I'm all excited about.
Anything like, Dunk the Chief, something like that?
They try that every year.
I've tried.
Oh, come on. Okay. Maybe the future.
Before I retire, he will be in a dunk tank. But that we're still working on. We're still looking for sponsors. The event is funded solely based on donations from the community. So I'm working on that. Then the next one that I'm going to be doing is our Christmas Bike giveaway, and that is a program that is exclusive to Leesburg Police Department. I've been here 25 years, and it started several years before me. But the program originated by officers coming together on a Saturday and cleaning up and rebuilding unclaimed bicycles. People got wind of it, started giving donations, and that's what it's evolved into now. Is we get donations from the community, and then we end up getting names from counselors within the school. They've got liaison officers who know that they have families that are struggling and kids might not be getting Christmas. So we give them presents. They get wrapped presents, and they get bicycles. But we do that every year. That is something that I'm starting up, gearing that.
Yeah, because we're approaching the holidays.
Yeah, and then we also do a Shop with a Cop. We'll do that right around the same time.
Shop with a Cop.
Shop with a Cop is another donation-based thing where the community does donate. Each child, again, that is selected from the schools through a liaison officer gets a $100 gift card to Target did it up in Lady Lake. We teamed up with Fruitland Park and Lady Lake Police Department and did one for the North Lake communities. So we take out of our own community, and each child gets their own police officer. They get a $100 gift card, and they get to shop for however long it takes. Some of them finish in about 5 minutes. Some of them take a little bit more time. But
sure. That's
another program that we do. But those are the three that I'm working on right now. And again, those are all funded based on participation from the community.
So if someone was interested, where can they get the information? Or how can, because I assume sponsors aren't necessarily individuals, maybe businesses and organizations.
All of the above. We have individuals, and then we have businesses. If somebody were interested in obtaining information, there's a couple different ways. We do post stuff on our Facebook page, so it's as simple as going on our Facebook page and just liking, and we try to keep things up with the events that are coming or that we are participating in. But they can also call Community Services, which the phone number is 728-9859. That rings directly into my office, and I'll be happy to provide anybody with any information or answer any questions.
Okay. Now, how important are events like this? I mean, it seems to me that it's a community builder, right?
So-
Especially with like the climate where, you know, views on law enforcement are so polarized right now. You love them or you don't, you know.
Yeah, it's been instrumental for us, and when I took over as police chief, Sgt Stewart was working on the road, and she was one of our more community-oriented sergeants at that time. She would do stuff on her own, get her squad doing things. So I selected her for the position that she's in now because I knew that she'd do a wonderful job, and she's well exceeded my expectations and has taken the events or some of the things that we've thought of and either thought of them herself or taken an idea and really ran with it. But the key is that we have to continue the community outreach, especially now in these times where people are inundated with negativity about police, whether it be true or not, mostly not true. And so we have to get out there and show kids and adults and everybody within our community who we are and the fact that our police officers are the same as they are. They have husbands and wives and mothers and daughters and all of those things. And it's a really unique experience. The Shop with a Cop is a lot of fun. It's the one-on-one experience where at the very beginning the kid doesn't really know, just being shy, and by the end of it, you know, he's asking the officer for more money to get more things, and it's a great experience. National Night Out was really we've done it before, much more scaled down. Sergeant Stewart turned it into the best possible use of the word circus. She has really made an event that people want to come out to, and we get tons of reviews, and people come out and have a good time. But all of those things, what they have in common is that we have our police officers out there interacting with the community in just a non-stress environment and letting everybody talk and interact.
We've got some other stuff that we do also that puts us on a level, some of them with kids, some of them with older people, but different people in the community. But the chief, we do impromptu barbecues, and we have a trailer that is branded our logo. We've got a grill,
is that right?
And we will load up just on the spur of the moment, pick a place, and go out, and we have chips and cook hot dogs, and we have bottled water, and just interact. We bring out some games and stuff, so we do that. We partner with some different organizations like AMSCOT. That's another one that I've got coming up in October. We give away free bike helmets. Do a lot of safety programs, not only just in the schools, but we also do them for senior groups, trying to educate them on different fraud to keep them from becoming victims. But then we partake in different city events, which another one I have coming up is a chili cook-off. Last year was the first year that I did it. It's put on, I guess, by the Downtown Partnership or the downtown businesses. But we took a first place in the best decorated and second place in judges and people's choice. I was told we couldn't beat the fire department, so this year we got it coming
I
up.
was going to ask,
Well,
that's the urban legend? Or?
But let me preface it. She said it's the first year she did it. It's not the first year we did it.
I did.
Because the first year
He didn't place when he did it.
The first year I did it and made the worst chili. Basically was spaghetti sauce, and it was horrible. But we still got a lot of votes just because we were selling it very hard. So she came in and actually used a recipe that mattered, and I actually stayed away from it. I think I was at a seminar. I was away.
He told me 3 days before, by the way, you're doing the chili cook-off.
So they did a great
3
job,
days.
and while they didn't get we won the overall. Let's just say this: the fire department won People's Choice, but we had 2 first places and a second place. So if you average them together, Leesburg Police Department won the chili cook-off. That's what I'm going
God.
with.
Well, congratulations. Well, what did
We
the
got
fire
one
department
person,
have to
two
say?
seconds, but
They still think they won, but that's all right.
But we're going to beat them this year, so we need.
So there'll be
people
a
to
little
come out.
more. There you go. Where is this going to be held? Do we know yet?
It's downtown, and there'll be a little bit of a, I don't want to say shock value to our
And that's November 4th.
November 4th.
Downtown.
Yeah.
It is a great community event for the sheriff's department shows up. A ton of business owners from downtown show up. You get there first thing in the morning. You've got to cook on scene or on site.
Okay, so no pre-prepping.
Yeah, well,
None.
Okay.
yeah, we abide by the rules. I don't know that everybody does, but so it's a good time. You get to interact, but the thing is, you can come out earlier and just talk to the people that are cooking, and all our officers are out there. And we have a lot of wonderful volunteers and spouses from some of our officers that come out and help, and so it's another great informal way to just talk with the community.
And with something he just brought up is volunteers. Another thing that we do is our Citizens Academy, which is once a year.
All right.
And that is to better acquaint our citizens with the police department, the members of the police department, kind of give them a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look on how we operate. It's very educational. We haven't had anybody go through that hasn't said it, that they didn't learn something from it. But with that, too, I get volunteers out of that. So I have a lot of people that do volunteer and that help out at the different events and so forth, because obviously we can't do it. We don't have the manpower.
Sure.
But they come out and volunteer, and I'm hoping, usually we do it March, April, and I'm hoping that this next year I will follow it with another academy for our Citizens on Patrol. We have 3 currently, and I'm going to try and add some more to that too.
Oh, okay. So this academy is, they don't come out as volunteer law enforcement or anything like that, do they?
It's
Or
not to
just
make a
more
police officer.
informational?
Yes, it's educational
Okay.
on how we operate, and it gives people have a lot of questions. They watch TV, they
Sure.
see things on social media, and have a lot of misconceptions on how law enforcement is. So the Citizens Academy kind of brings things a little bit more true perspective to them, and gives them a better understanding of how things operate and what we do.
Anything that helps humanize law enforcement.
Correct.
And I say that and it sounds ridiculous, but for so many, you grow up and cops. And Chief, you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, cops, police officers, wives, husbands, brothers, sisters, they're people. They're people performing a service.
Well, and if you think about what you were saying when you're growing up and when we were growing up, one of the things is about, telling your kid you better do this or a police officer's going to get you. We don't want that. We want people that are in need
Sure.
to want to come to us.
Exactly. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Chief, Sergeant, thank y'all very much for coming. I hope to have you come back on again in the future and talk a little bit more about your department.
Thanks for having us. We had a lot of fun.
All right. Well, that wraps us up for today. I'm your host, Kris Poliquin. Thanks for making waves with us. We'll see you next time.